Hello, I'm Brian Dufresne. I'm the Director of Music and Worship Arts at Mountain View United Methodist Church in Boulder. Welcome to my home. I'm playing on my Johannes Symphonica 47 digital organ, and I'm recording on Sunday evening when it's pretty much snowing like crazy outside. When we have weather like this, I can't help but think about folks who might be less fortunate or who don't have adequate housing, and I pray for them. So I hope that you are warm. I hope that everyone that you know and love is well taken care of. And what you just heard was me improvising on a hymn that I discovered just a few weeks ago as I was reading the latest episode of the American Organist magazine, which is the national publication of the American Guild of Organists, of which I've been a member for coming up on 40 years now. And in that magazine, in that edition, was an article by the Wayne Leupold Foundation, and their mission is to preserve organ music, sheet music, historical as well as modern compositions, and they have an educational component as well, and they also have a remarkable hymn database. And one hymn that the Leupold Foundation was highlighting this month was Though Despair Like Deepest Darkness, which is the hymn I was improvising on. This hymn was written 4 years ago after the contentious 2016 election. I say contentious 2016 election, but the 2020 election was a little bit contentious as well. But it was the text was inspired by that particular event. For those of you who were at the outdoor service, the communion service on Sunday, the Sunday before last actually, you may remember that I sang this during communion distribution, and Linda Chambers accompanied me on the piano for that. The text for this hymn was written by Mary Nelson Kaitan. She's a graduate of Carleton College as well as Yale Divinity School, and is a United Church of Christ pastor, retired now, retired and living in Rapid City, South Dakota. So she still works out of her home as a freelance writer, lyricist, and hymn writer. She's written a lot of curriculum resources and worship resources, articles for religious journals, the books and lyrics for 10 multi-generational musical dramas, and many, many hymns, some of which appear in more recently published hymnals and supplements to hymnals. She writes from a lifetime of experience as a pastor's wife, a mother, a grandmother, and as a volunteer in various areas of community life. In addition to hymns, Mary Kaitan has written 2 books, one entitled Embracing the Light, Reflections on God's Word, as well as a child's reader book called Elfie, Adventures of the Midwest, Adventures on the Midwest, perfect for elementary school readers. Her writing is easy to read, insightful, and I think is very thoughtful. Her hymn texts are also very easy to read. The text of some hymns is a little challenging to understand sometimes because it is poetry, and it's set to music with a standard rhythm that sometimes isn't perfectly appropriate or applicable to the way we would speak the same words. Hymns have always been used as poetry for the base of, as the base of text for hymns. The same is true for nearly any song we ever write. Take your favorite song or hymn, take out the music, and look at the words in front of you, and you will see that you have a poem in front of you. During my years of teaching music, choir and guitar and music theory and directing the musicals, I would encourage my students to compose. I would encourage my students to write their own songs. And frequently one would come to me with say, Mr. D, I have a song that I want you to look at. And I'd see a piece of paper with a whole bunch of text, and I'd look at it and I'd read it, and I said, this is beautiful poetry. These are beautiful words. Now sing it, and maybe play piano with it, or have somebody play piano or guitar with it, and it will turn into a beautiful song. And sometimes that's the more challenging part for young musicians, is to put music to texts that they've already written. But some are able to work the opposite direction. They have a beautiful idea musically, and it's tough for them sometimes to put words to it. So everyone comes at composition from a different perspective. I always used to love taking these words that a student might bring me and give them ideas on how we might come up with musical ideas to highlight the ideas that are written there in the text. So the music for this particular hymn, Though Despair Like Deepest Darkness, was written by John Harmon. He's a composer, clinician, and a former public school music teacher. He is organist and director of music at First Congregational in Washington, D.C. And Mary Keitan and John Harmon have been music collaborators for almost 30 years, and they've written over 100 hymns together. So to the hymn itself, musically, the first half of the hymn is in minor, so I'll just play that a little bit for you. And then the second half of the hymn is in major. About this is actually changing keys from minor to major, but technically that would be incorrect. This is actually what is called a modal change. It's still centered around the the tonic pitch D, but major and minor are modes, and you may have heard of Ionian mode or Aeolian mode or even Mixolydian mode. The technique of a modal change, though not very common in traditional hymnody, is seen in some newer hymns, and it is very effective when parts of the hymn, parts of the poem could benefit from different musical styles. In this hymn's text, the first half tends to be somber, sorrowful, perhaps even plaintive. But the second half, the text has that uplifting, hopeful, forward-looking feel to it. Not only does it change from minor to major, but at that particular transition point, the first chord in the major section is none other than what they call a major seventh chord, which happens additionally to be in first inversion, a sound that's really bright and scintillating. It almost makes that section stand up on its tippy toes. And so I'm going to just isolate that transition for you. So here's the minor section going into the major section. Sorry. Bright major feel to it. So the contrast between major and minor really couldn't be more effective. The title of the hymn, Though Despair Like Deepest Darkness, seems foreboding perhaps, but with a transition from minor to major and with the contour of its closing melodic line, it to me is indicative of our journey through the Lenten season. 40 days of introspection and reflection, prayer, to arrive on that most glorious day of the year, Christ's resurrection. It seems to me that this hymn is actually a microcosm of that journey. And the text uses modern language, easily accessible and easy to engage with, but it makes us think, and it challenges us to have patience and understanding, to befriend the outsider, to accept people that we might often want to reject, be willing to share the light of God's love with one another, all while we continue to seek to do what is right. So my hope is that you'll find this hymn to be a source of hope and inspiration.
Has descended on our land.
outsiders, strangers, other people may reject. In our nation so divided, in our world that cries for peace, let your love shine through the darkness, that all fears and doubts